We're going to need a bigger boat, Earthlets, on this episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast. We are talking about the ultimate shark. Not the poxy thing you see on the movie screen, but the titan of British comics from the 1970s, Hookjaw. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, this is the 2000 AD Thrillcast. I am your host, Molch-R, and on this episode, we're talking Battle Action number 3, which is imminent. And just like Chief Brody, Hooper, and Quint, we are on the hunt for greater prey than even Jaws itself. And I'm delighted that my boatmates on this journey are artist John McCrea and artist-writer Steve White. Welcome to the Thrillcast, gentlemen.
Hello there, Mike.
Hi there.
So we're talking Battle Action number 3, but specifically one of the strips that was in Action, which is, it is one of those characters which I feel even outside of like the fandom of Battle and Action has transcended his humble origins, which is Hookjaw, who. For those who don't know, for those who are perhaps curious as to what we're talking about, Steve, describe Hookjaw as succinctly as possible.
Well, it's just the life and times of a psychopathic great white shark who, like, as his name implies, has a harpoon hook through his lower jaw.
And end of description.
Is it fair to say psychopathic, Steve? Is he not just a shark doing what a shark
does? This is where you get into, I'm gonna have to, argue that one. So,
I love that. I mean, we're not even 2 minutes in, and already John has hit the big red button marked stuff Steve talks about. Well, I mean, so Hookjaw was one of the stories from Action, and like you say, it's a great white, a white shark, great whites as they were once known, who has a particular penchant for eating people. Now, this, it's with Action, it was all about the dead crib, wasn't it? The taking something that was popular at the time.
Yeah,
and translating it for kids, and there was no way on God's green earth that a kid was going to get to see Jaws in.
Actually, because that was one of the things. Sorry, just to interject.
Yeah,
one of the things about Jaws was that it was classified A.
What? Are you joking?
So when it came out at the time,
yeah,
they gave it an A classification, which I guess now would be, I don't know, what's the next step up from you?
A PG.
Well. Yeah, PG, which is essentially because there was, I think at the time it was quite controversial, but because I think it was because they wanted to make it into the big summer blockbuster, they downrated it to make it accessible to everyone, because I was 11 when I saw it.
Likewise, Steve. I went to see it at the cinema. Same year as I went to see Star Wars, obviously.
Yeah.
And remember thinking, this is nearly as good as Star Wars.
I mean, are we talking kind of origin story for you both here, that you were traumatized at the age of 11?
Oh, no.
Very much so.
Two very different reactions there.
Yeah.
No. I grew up in the mean streets of Northern Ireland. I'd already been traumatized.
You make a very good point, John. You make a very good point. Let's talk about this news story, because we'll come on to the classic stuff from the 1970s in a minute. But Battle Action number 3, which is Garth Ennis has brought together an incredible roster of creators for this miniseries, and you've got Johnny Red, you've got Hellman of Hammer Force, all the kind of classic battle stories. But then this is one specifically that's been chosen from Action. Tell us a little bit about this story, Steve, and I mean, how excited were you to write a Hookjaw story?
I mean, it was a sort of bucket list moment, but I think a lot of it was, one of the reasons that I got asked, I think, was because of my, prior knowledge of great whites and sharks and what have you. And I think Garth was really trying to find something that was going to be a bit different. I mean, I know that there's actually been like some of the latest stories have been really interesting. Was it Alex Worley who wrote the one that was sort of set a couple of centuries ago, almost like the ghost hookjaw or while, and I thought that was a great concept. But I think it was just I wanted to sort of, go back to basics with hookjaw, but like try and give it a sort of more modern or just a different slant. And Garth sort of, said to me, "What would you do with a hookjaw story?" And as it happens, I'm currently working on a book on shark evolution with the head of shark resources management in South Africa, my lovely friend Charlene De Silva. Yeah, as you do. And she had just sent me an academic paper on the recent spate of killings of great white sharks by orcas. This was like one of those things that was like initially very mysterious. These great whites were sort of washing up on the shores of South Africa, and nobody was really sure what was causing it. And then various studies were made, and it turned out it was a particular pair of orcas. And I just kind of thought the idea of giving hookjaw an orca antagonist, it was just that seemed to, I just thought, hookjaw's always been the antagonist. It would be nice to have, the boot on the other fin. And that was kind of where the story came from.
Brilliant. I can't think of a more qualified person to be writing a hookjaw story. It's a relatively. I mean, it's a one-issue story, so I kind of don't want to give too much away about it. But one of the things I like about it is that you immediately, straight out the gate, you've got all the great. Not cliches is the wrong word, but all the kind of the standard characters. You've got the thrill seeker idiot. Who's going to get himself killed. You've got the kind of eco-friendly, concerned person who's there.
Who is actually based on my friend Charlene.
Well, they're perfect. I mean, I was about to ask, did all these characters just immediately kind of pop into your head and like, that's what I want to do?
Well, the filmmaker was actually, again, it was based on actual events. There's been like quite a lot of controversy caused by one of the documentary channels filming recklessly around the Guadalupe Islands, which is an area where great whites gather in big numbers, and a lot of footage that you see of great whites is generally shot there. And they had done some pretty stupid things that had actually resulted, I think, in a fatality. A guy had been killed, and which led to the sort of banning of filming around the Guadalupe Islands. And again, that was kind of, I wanted to do those kind of guys, these sort of Johnny Knoxville sort of, jackass kind of guys that sort of think, hey, yeah, we're going to be really hip and cool and go and film great whites and be really reckless and do something really, really dumb in the process. So, yeah, and the head of shark resources management, as I say, was based on Charlene, who had told me a really brilliant story about a friend of hers. They had gone diving they were trying to tag a bull shark in the waters off South Africa. It was like this huge bull shark that they knew was there in terrible visibility. And she was 7 months pregnant. She'd actually like gone in the water, like in this sort of cloudy water, looking for one of the most dangerous sharks you can imagine while she was heavily pregnant. And I just thought, when Charlie told me that, I was like, I've got to get that into a story. So that's why, if it seems a bit arbitrary that she's 7 months pregnant, that was why.
Incredible. Wow. So, John.
Yeah. Well, I accidentally stabbed myself with my pen recently, and I thought that was pretty outrageous. So yeah, no. Yeah. Her story is as nothing compared to my epic quest to.
I was going to ask you, notoriously, animals are something that a lot of artists can't necessarily enjoy drawing, because they're very specific. I mean, particularly when you're talking like dogs and horses and things with four legs and backwards knees. With something like sharks and orcas, what are the challenges for you as an artist drawing something like this?
The challenge is that I've got Steve White staring over my goddamn shoulder, and Steve can draw all this stuff better than anybody. That's the challenge. Though I've got to point out that there was an absolutely brilliant little bit of a little note from Steve right at the end of the script, where he describes this scene and then goes on to point out that it's nothing he wouldn't draw himself. So, carry on, John. And I was like, yeah, Steve, you wouldn't draw, you wouldn't not draw it yourself, but you'd take a week to do it. You'd take a goddamn week. I've got 3 hours to get this frigging thing done. It was just like,
I guess I never really thought of it in that perspective. Yeah, apologies about that, John.
I'm only joking because I'm not. It was very funny. But yeah, the challenges are really drawing sharks is a piece of pish, because drawing hook jaw is a piece of pish, because you just draw something and then just try to make it as satanic looking as possible. Just put more gnarly crap on it. I mean, there's a thing with Hookjaw. He's got a big hook through his jaw, obviously, by the name says. But I thought, well, he's got a hook through his jaw because somebody shot a hook, like a harpoon, through his jaw at some point. Surely he's going to have had other encounters, which is why in mine he has like a big thing sticking out of just beside his dorsal fin. There's a big bolt with a chain hanging off it, hanging out, because somebody stabbed him with that at some point while being chewed in half. And there's tons of harpoons and things, and just smaller things all poking out of him, because of course he wouldn't, he's Hookjaw, he's always getting up to mischief. So there's going to be so I just and all that sort of stuff just makes him look eviler. The more scarring, the more bits of crap sticking out of him, the more big chunks removed from him. I also didn't mind drawing him. Like, if you look in some of the pictures of him, his teeth are almost coming out of, like, not his mouth, but around his mouth as well. I just sort of thought, there's not enough teeth here. I need to put yet more teeth in and just have them just sticking out of the skin, coming out of around his jaw as well, because I want more teeth. So yeah, anything really with Hookjaw, it's okay. You've got to get it looking like a shark. Generally it has to look like a shark, but then it's like a shark that's been sort of injected with tons and tons of amphetamines, and generally had its had a lobotomy, and then sent off to kill everything. So yeah, I mean, I was a bit disappointed because I did ask the colorist to color his eyes red throughout, because obviously I wanted the idea of blood being reflected in his eyes constantly, and also it looks cooler, but that was removed. Yeah, the red eyes were rejected. But I just want them to look like Satan, like Satan in the water is the general my thrust when drawing Hookjaw.
Because you did, PJ Holden did layouts on there.
He did. PJ did layouts because basically I couldn't draw at the time. I got the script, and then something happened, and I was a bit fucked. And I was just looking at blank page, and I was just going, I can't deal with this. And I had to ask Paul to come in and do all my layouts for me, so I didn't have to think so much. And I've worked with Paul before on a couple of things where, you know, when I got long COVID, the same thing happened, and I had to give the job to Paul so that he could do. Well, actually, Paul did all the job at that point, and then only later on did I come in and start inking a few things when I'd sort of vaguely recovered from my long COVID. But yeah, I got Paul in to do the job. And the great thing about Paul is that he's A, incredibly fast, and B, his storytelling is immaculate. Steve, it was not a uncomplicated script. It was, there was so many levels to the script. There was the stuff in the air. There's drones. There's the stuff on the surface, the boats. Then there's the stuff in the water, but not water, which is the guys in all the cages. Then there's the sharks, and then there's, and then there's and it was just like, God, there's all these levels of things. And then you've got screens showing the action under the water, out of the water as well. So it was not an uncomplicated script to do, and a lot of moving parts, all within sort of various enclosed spaces. Even though the water is vast, it's still, you're contained within that area beneath the boat to a degree. So it was all very complicated moving parts, and my brain could not do the storytelling at the time. So I gave it to Paul, to just do all the math for me, because math was never my strong point, and and I was just not in the mood for it at that point. I do sort of feel that my storytelling is reasonably strong. I just wasn't ready for this story at that point. But I got to come along and do all the fun stuff, which is just sort of take Paul's layouts of sharks and go, right, let's just ramp this up a million.
It's a wonderful bit of kind of good timing, I think, with the story, because not only, Steve, are you basing it on the reports of the orcas attacking great whites, but of course, globally, people are now aware that orcas are attacking boats, so what? It's a bit like pandas, really. A cute-looking animal actually tear your face off if you're not careful.
Yeah.
What, a panda?
Yeah, there's been it was something that recently came out that they're actually far more aggressive than they would seem.
Oh, right. Okay. Serves us right, I suppose.
So, I mean, with someone like Hookjaw, obviously you've got this fantastic outside element with the orcas coming in. So it's not just him, because that was the joy of Hookjaw stories, wasn't it? It was basically him just eviscerating human beings in increasingly evil ways. But what is it? What is it about Hookjaw? It's just, leaving aside the violence, what is it about Hookjaw that just that enthralls you, that still means that he's known as a character?
I mean, from my perspective, I guess it is that, I do have that sort of incredible nostalgia. Action was one of the first comics I actually really remember, buying for what it was. It was the first title that I bought because it was, the comic that I wanted to buy wasn't something that, I would arbitrarily pick up in the newsagent. And much of it was driven by, because I'd seen Jaws and I'd been one of those people that had developed that sort of weird horror struck fascination with sharks. So when Action came out and there was Hookjaw, I was immediately transfixed. And it was also Ramon Sola's artwork was some of the first that I really remember actually, again, sort of identifying with the artist. I would buy his comics. I mean, it was just ironic that he ended up drawing the story that featured my other great passion, dinosaurs. So yeah, but
What
irony.
story is that, Steve?
But yeah, it was, it was always, something that I absolutely loved reading. So yeah, it was kind of interesting to sort of think about, you know, I didn't want to turn it into, it would be one of those things if I tried to sort of do a very, you know, modern stroke accurate take on a great white, I'd be, it would just be like, no, because true story, the very first version of the plot I did, Hookjaw didn't kill anyone. The orcas were like killing people or one way or the other. But so Garth actually contacted, like, he saw the plot and he was like, it's Hookjaw, he has to kill people. And I was just kind of like, yeah, what was I thinking? It's like this great woke shark, it's, it's,
oh, that's great.
I can't, I've got to sort of pay homage to the original version. So it's like, okay, throw in arbitrary death, that's I've got to sort of, get back, get back to its roots, sort of thing, So,
John, I mean, Steve brought up Ramon Sola there, the Hookjaw artist. I mean, was there any part of you wanting to kind of riff off the kind of style, the madness of the original, or was it like, I'm going to do, me and PJ are going to do it our way?
Well, I mean, I honestly, while I remember and love those stories dearly, I was still just going to I mean, just do it in my style. Hopefully it would sort of homage. I was just doing it in my style. I remember picking up, Battle is one of my formative, Action is one of my formative comics. I remember picking up a particular issue of Action, and it's like crystal clear memory in my head, and running home from the shop with it and jumping onto the armchair in my mum and dad's living room and opening it up to Hookjaw, because I always read Hookjaw first because he was the most brutal and evil. Though Dredger did try hard. I had to give him that. But opening up, reading Hookjaw, and this particular story was these two kids in a little rowboat rowing out into the ocean for whatever reason. Probably they were fishing or something, and flipping the page, and it was a single page shot of Hookjaw bursting out of the water, and just the boat and the kids were in his mouth, and legs and heads and limbs were just flying in all directions in absolute gory detail, and me just going, this is the most incredible thing I've ever read. It's brilliant. I was just in heaven, because I was an evil, bloodthirsty little bastard, like we all were, I suppose. And
I don't think it did us any harm.
Well, no, none at all. And so yes, I just loved Hookjaw from that point. And he, like you said earlier, Steve, bucket list stuff. I always wanted to draw Hookjaw. I did a cover for Titan a bunch of years back, but it's not quite the same as drawing an actual story. So yeah. But he's obviously an influence. Whether or not you can see it within my art is another matter entirely. I would imagine I'm more leaning towards Kevin Neal and Mike McMahon these days in my art, though, obviously like shit versions of both of them.
No, I mean, you're doing yourself a disservice there, but also I think there is the particularly your stuff in recent years. There's a kind of dynamism. You seem to be playing a lot more with extreme kind of foreshortening and things like that kind of bring a certain energy.
It's comics. You've got to do that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But you look back at people like Sola, and the Argentinians and the Italians and the Spanish that were all there at the early days of 2000 AD, and they've I think from a commercial point of view, they're quick and they're cheap. But from a reader point of view, I mean, you Steve obliquely
I used to be quick and cheap.
Wait.
No, I am slow and cheap.
Steve mentioned, obliquely mentioned flesh there. You look at that and the dynamism of those stories and of Hookjaw and of anything that they got their hands on. It's there. No wonder kids were massively into this, because it gave them all the gory stuff that they absolutely adore. And it just felt like there was pace to it,
Yeah.
It's almost like talking about comics when I was a kid, it felt risky.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, you remember lots of moments from your comic reading childhood, but I mean, that page of Hookjaw and the page of Flesh where the dinosaur gets its head, the T-Rex gets its head lasered off and then is still crashing around like a chicken, after it's had its head. I mean, how it's imprinted in my brain is that sequence. Very. So, no wonder I ended up drawing the way I draw a lot, I guess. Even if it's not stylistically, there's similarities, certainly viscerally, fuck's sake, that was easy to pronounce. It's certainly imprinted there. Yeah.
It's Steve. John's mentioned his favorite Hookjaw moment. Do you have one? Is there one that's kind of seared onto your
brain? Yeah. I mean, I always remember the bit. There were two. There was the giant squid fight, and there's the one with the diver in the cage where the baby great white swim through the cage bars and eat him while he's in the cage, which I just thought was absolute genius idea. I was just like, oh my god, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, sort of thing.
That's great.
It's been interesting as well, because there's that great scene, or I think it's a couple. I can't remember if it is like the episode with the crashed plane, where the plane is on the seabed and they're sort of trapped in the plane. And the sharks, and there's the scene where like they go to like get the pilot, and Hookjaw's like stuck his head in the cockpit and is eating the pilot. But I actually thought there's a film just come out like that.
Really?
Yes.
I was just kind of like,
correct.
It does make you wonder if I'm sure it was all.
Of course,
just,
they were all reading 2000 AD in action.
Yeah,
of course they were. They've stolen it, left hook, line, and sinker. Same with that Kevin Neal story with the the Quark or the Squark or whatever the fuck he was called, that monster. It was a short story in 2000, and it got turned into the film.
The Kevin Neal one was Hardware, which was the
that's it. Hardware. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hardware. Yes.
But
it happens all the time, doesn't it?
There was this wonderful genre in the 70s and 80s of monster comic, like wild animal comics, because you've obviously got Hookjaw, but you've also got Shaco in 2000 AD. Flesh, obviously, even things like Ant Wars, which for all of its failings was a particular favorite of mine when I think it got reprinted.
That was again beautiful artwork.
Yeah, well, exactly, and it was reprinted in the New Eagle in the later 80s, because you've got all this amazing artwork. And there's just something about like there was this period when like the way to be ultra violent and to just eviscerate human beings was to have them being eaten.
Yeah. I think it's almost like you can get away with more when it's an animal.
Yeah. Particularly when there's a kind of moral economy to it as well, that it's man's hubris, attempting to kill Hookjaw. Well, like the hunting of sharks has driven Hookjaw mad. The capsule that Shaco swallows is it sends him on this rampage. And it just I like that there always has to be a moral behind it, which is that everyone's going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting you say that as well, because of course the thing that got action banned wasn't any of the animals killing people, but it was the kid with the chain
Yeah.
breaking
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
wasn't it? So as soon as that, as long as you just have animals chewing people up, fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There does seem to be some sort of kind of weird voyeurism about it. It's like when, it always makes me laugh with all these sort of documentary channels when they have Shark Week or their shark season, and they're all sort of sitting there like hand on heart going, it is terrible what is happening to sharks. 100 million sharks killed every year. But let's go over to the program about people being killed by sharks. It's like and it's just like, Muck shark attack. Meanwhile, shark attack. It's like all these documentaries that they sort of try and pretend that they're caring about the destruction of sharks, but they're just actually reinforcing all the stereotypes.
Gents, I could talk to you about this for an hour easily. Not least the fact that Steve is an expert on this stuff and hangs out with people who are experts on this stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to the issue coming out. Very much enjoying Steve also doing a cover for it. One of his fantastic animal drawings. Where can people find you online if they wish to check out your work?
I'll forget. Well, if they're looking for me, no sense of irony or coincidence, but it's Shark Bite Steve is my handle. So on Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent.
X, sorry.
Yeah.
And Blue Sky.
What about you, John?
I'm McCrea Man on Twitter, and I'm McCrea Man 1 on Insta, and I'm on Facebook as well, but I guess you just search my name up for that. I guess.
Wonderful.
I think that's
wonderful. I mean, I like I said, we could chat about this for ages. But in the meantime, very much looking forward to the issue coming out, and congrats on a fantastic story. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And I guess, is this the point where we start singing "Show Me the Way to Go Home"?
That's the thing about a shark. It's got dead eyes, like a doll's eyes.